The night sky cracked with fire. Flames surged like monsters through the pines, devouring everything she loved. Her home? Gone. Her fiancé? Lost in the blaze. And yet, through the smoke and chaos, one shadow stayed by her side, not a person, but a wild lynx with golden eyes and a heart that refused to leave. Why did this creature remain when the world turned to ash? And what did it see in her that even humans overlooked? This isn't just a survival story. It's about a bond so deep, even nature itself bowed to it. And it all began with fire. Inferno in the pines. The wind howled across the Bitterroot Mountains, dry and sharp like broken glass. It carried with it the scent of pine sap, smoke, and something far more sinister. Lily McKenna was already awake before the first alarm ever blared. She'd grown up in the forest, and she knew what it meant when the wind shifted in July and the sky turned that strange bronze haze. But on that night, it wasn't instinct that roused her. It was Bramble. The lynx appeared at the bedroom window like a ghost from the trees, her golden eyes wide and gleaming in the dark. Her short tail twitched nervously as she pawed softly at the pane. She never came that close. Not unless something was terribly wrong. Lily sat upright in bed. Jonah stirred beside her. "What is it?" he mumbled, half asleep. "I don't know," she whispered. She's never done that before. That's when she smelled it. The smoke. Thick. Acrid. Close. And then came the sirens, distant but rising, and the unmistakable orange flicker from behind the ridge. She leapt from the bed. The cabin's back windows glowed with the reflection of fire already crawling through the trees. "Oh God," she gasped, pulling Jonah by the arm. "The fire's here. We have to go." But Jonah, ever the calm one, the builder of the cabin, the fixer of broken pipes and planter of spring, hesitated. Just for a second. Just enough to grab the emergency kit and douse towels in water. Enough to make the wrong choice. Lily was already shoving her boots on barefoot. The heat outside pressed against the walls. A hum like an angry engine filled the air. Then the glass shattered. The living room window exploded inward from the heat. Flames licked up the outer walls like fingers hungry for more. Smoke filled the house in seconds. "Jonah! Come on!" she screamed. He grabbed the dog, Ranger, and tried to force open the front door, but it was too late. The porch was already ablaze. Out the back. Lily cried, grabbing his hand. But Bramble was there again, in the clearing, eyes locked on her. And Lily knew. There was no more time. She turned to Jonah, but a falling timber had already split the hall behind them. She screamed his name until her voice cracked. But all she heard was the roar of the flames, the groan of timber collapsing, and the sharp sudden yelp of Ranger. Jonah disappeared in the smoke. She wanted to run in. Wanted to tear down the walls and dig through the fire, but Bramble snarled, a sharp wild sound that broke through Lily's panic like a whip crack. Then came the crash. The roof buckled. That's when she knew. Jonah was gone. She stumbled backward, coughing, blinded by smoke. Bramble disappeared into the tree-line. Heart-pounding, Lily burst out the back door just before the roof caved in entirely. The flames turned the cabin, the life they built, into nothing but bones and ash. She fell to her knees in the clearing, gasping for air. Silence. Then, a sound behind her. Soft. Careful. Paws on soil. Bramble was there. Not running. Not leaving. Sitting quietly behind her. Lily looked into those wild golden eyes through her tears. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered hoarsely. But Bramble stayed. The lynx stepped forward, brushed her thick mottled coat against Lily's arm, and sat beside her like a sentry. Not a pet. Not a captive. Not tamed. But a creature who had made a choice. And as the sun rose over the burning mountain, Lily realized. Bramble wasn't just part of the forest anymore. She was all Lily had left. A cub in the snow. It was the tail end of a brutal winter, the kind that crusted Montana's trees in ice and swallowed sound beneath layers of snow. Lily McKenna was 23 then, barely a year into her job as a wildlife veterinary assistant for a field station on the edge of the Bitterroot Forest. She had frost on her lashes and a med kit slung over her shoulder when she heard the sound, faint, ragged, barely audible over the crunch of her snowshoes. A cry. Not a bird. Not a fox. Something younger. Injured. She froze, turning her head toward the trees. Again, the cry came. High-pitched, uneven, and close. She followed it through the snowdrifts, heart pounding. Branches scraped at her jacket. The cold bit through her gloves. But the sound grew louder, more desperate. Then she saw it. At the base of a fallen pine, nearly buried beneath a thin crust of snow, a tiny creature shivered. At first, she thought it was a bobcat. But as she knelt closer, she saw the telltale signs. The oversized paws. The ear tufts like inkbrush strokes. The ghost gray fur dusted with darker freckles. A lynx. Barely 3 months old. And caught, its right hind leg twisted unnaturally, held in the cruel iron jaws of a forgotten snare. "Oh God," she murmured, voice breaking through the cold air like glass. "Hey there, baby." The kitten hissed weakly, but it didn't have the strength to fight. Blood had frozen around the trap, and the lynx's body was frighteningly still. Lily moved slowly, her fingers numb but practiced. She whispered to it as she worked, voice low and steady. "I'm not gonna hurt you. I promise. I've got you, little one." With a careful twist and the help of a tension bar, the trap snapped open. The lynx didn't move. Lily cradled it in her arms, wrapping her emergency thermal blanket around its body, feeling its heart flutter like a dying moth against her chest. Back at the field station, they didn't expect it to survive the night. Even the lead vet, Dr. Reyes, told her gently, "Sometimes nature decides. All we can do is make it comfortable." But Lily wouldn't accept that. She stayed up through the storm, warming broth with her own hands, massaging the lynx's stiff limbs, whispering to it through the endless night. And somewhere between the 2nd hour and the 7th, the lynx opened one eye. Golden. Wild. Sharp. That's when Lily named her Bramble. Because she was small and tangled and fierce, like the bramble thickets that tore at your skin but always found a way to survive the snow. Lily didn't know then what Bramble would become. She only knew that she couldn't let her die alone in the cold. A wild kind of friendship. Bramble didn't heal quickly. Her leg remained stiff for weeks, and her weight dropped dangerously low. But Lily never left her side, not once. They kept her in a quiet enclosure behind the field station, far from the noise of traffic and cameras, where snow still clung to the pines and silence ruled. At first, Bramble wouldn't eat unless Lily fed her directly, tiny bits of cooked rabbit and warmed formula spooned into her mouth. She growled at the other interns, flinched at shadows, and spent hours pressed to the farthest corner of her crate. But when Lily arrived each morning, slow, calm, voice like a hum, Bramble would lift her head. Sometimes she'd let her fingers brush the lynx's fur. Sometimes she wouldn't. It was never a guarantee. And Lily liked it that way. This wasn't a rescue dog or a house cat. This was something wild. The months passed. Spring thawed the snow, the ice gave way to budding birch leaves, and Bramble learned to walk again, awkward at first, then with confidence. By the time summer arrived, she no longer needed a bandage or a heat lamp. She could scale the logs in her enclosure in 3 bounds and land without sound. Lily knew what came next. Release. It was the goal. The mission. What every wildlife rehabber signed up for. But the day they opened the gate into the forest, Bramble didn't run. She walked out slowly, tail low, nose twitching. She turned once, looked straight at Lily, then vanished into the green like mist. Lily stood there a long time, hands buried in her jacket pockets, trying not to cry. She told herself it was good. It was right. But something inside her clenched. She returned to the station the next day, and the day after, and the week after that. Bramble didn't come back. Until she did. 2 weeks later, Lily found fresh paw prints circling the station. Then a rabbit carcass, left neatly at the door of her bunkhouse. Then one night, just after midnight, she heard a soft thump outside her window. Bramble was there. Perched on the deck like a ghost. Watching. No collar. No cage. Just a wild thing who remembered the hands that saved her. From then on, Bramble came and went as she pleased. She never let anyone else near her. Never entered the building. Never allowed herself to be touched. Except by Lily. By the fall, she had a routine. She'd disappear into the forest for days, even weeks. But she always came back. And when Lily sat out in the moonlight with a thermos of tea, Bramble would often sit nearby, eyes glowing in the dark, silent and watchful. It wasn't ownership. It wasn't taming. It was something older, stranger, deeper. A trust that didn't need words. A bond not born from control, but from respect. Alone with a lynx. 3 weeks after the fire, Lily stood in the ruins of her past life. The cabin was gone, only blackened posts jutted from the earth like broken teeth. Ash coated everything. The swing Jonah built for her hung limp from a scorched oak, chain links fused by heat. She hadn't spoken to another human in 9 days. No one had called, not even from town. The forest had swallowed her, and strangely, she didn't mind. What did she have left to return to? Her phone was dead. Her job at the wildlife station had ended 2 months before the fire, budget cuts. The only thing that remained was Bramble. And Bramble never left. She didn't follow Lily like a dog. She wasn't clingy or demanding. But every morning when Lily stepped out of the tiny shack she now lived in, half shed, half tarp, Bramble was there, waiting at the tree line. Sometimes on a rock. Sometimes crouched in the ferns. Silent. Watching. Lily never called her. She didn't need to. Their routine had become sacred. At dawn, Lily fetched water from the stream. Bramble would trail her at a distance, weaving between trees like a ghost. At dusk, they sat together by the fire pit. Bramble just outside the glow. Sometimes, Lily talked to her. Not in full conversations. But little things. You think it's gonna rain? Jonah would have hated this tarp. It leaks when the wind blows. You miss him too, don't you? Bramble would blink slowly, like she understood every word. And maybe, in some primal way, she did. One night, a thunderstorm rolled in, fast and violent. Lightning cracked over the ridge. Wind tore at the flaps of Lily's makeshift shelter. She sat huddled inside, shivering, soaked. Part of her almost wanted the wind to tear the whole thing away, just take her with it. Then something thumped outside. She scrambled for the flashlight, flicked it on. And there, crouched just beyond the tarp, was Bramble, soaked, ears flattened, fur puffed against the rain. She could have vanished into the woods. She should have. But she hadn't. Lily didn't move. She just reached out and opened the flap wider. Bramble stepped in. Not out of fear. Not because she needed saving. But because Lily did. The lynx curled at her feet, heavy and real. Her presence didn't fix the pain or rebuild the cabin. But in that moment, curled beside a wild animal who had no reason to stay, Lily didn't feel quite so hollow. The forest may have taken everything. But it had given her this one thing back. A companion who didn't speak, didn't pity, didn't ask anything. And didn't leave. The world is watching. Autumn came fast in the bitterroot. The trees ignited in gold and rust. Frost slicked the ground by morning, and the air grew sharp with the scent of pine and wood smoke from distant cabins. But none of that touched Lily's life. Her world was smaller now, quieter, raw. Just her, a tented lean-to, and a lynx who'd chosen not to walk away. But peace has a way of drawing eyes. It started with a drone. Lily was hanging laundry, what little she had left, when a buzz like an angry hornet broke the silence overhead. She shielded her eyes against the glare. The drone hovered. Dipped lower. It carried a tiny blinking camera. Bramble leapt to her feet from the shaded rocks near the fire pit, her ears pinned flat, muscles coiled. Lily grabbed a stone and hurled it. The drone zipped back up and vanished over the treetops. She cursed under her breath. The next day, 2 men came by on ATVs. Parked at the edge of her property. One had a clipboard. The other wore mirrored sunglasses and a wildlife agency badge. Ms. McKenna, the older man called. We've received reports of a wild animal being kept in proximity to your shelter. A lynx, possibly tagged. She's not kept, Lily said evenly, stepping between them and Bramble, who stood behind her half hidden in the brush. She's free. The agent with the badge chuckled. She looks tame to me. You feeding her? Got her on a schedule. She comes and goes. She's not caged. She's not mine. But she sleeps near you, the younger one pressed. You treat injuries, yes? We've heard you're a trained wildlife vet. Lily didn't respond. Her spine locked. The older man stepped forward. "Ma'am, under Montana law, harboring a lynx without a wildlife management permit is a federal offense. Endangered species regulations. It's not just paperwork, it's safety. Lynx are predators. One wrong move, and someone could get hurt. She's hurt no one. Yet. They handed her a notice. She didn't read it. That night, she didn't sleep. Bramble paced in slow circles just beyond the firelight, her silhouette gliding across the trees like smoke. Lily stared into the embers, her fists clenched in her lap. She'd lost her home. Her partner. Her sense of everything that mattered. Now they wanted to take Bramble too? Because she refused to leave? Because they didn't understand? But Lily knew what happened to wild animals caught too close to humans. They weren't rehomed. They were removed. With tranquilizers, or worse. And if Bramble ran, with that healed but stiff leg, she wouldn't last long. Lily whispered into the dark. "We'll figure this out. I won't let them touch you." From the trees, golden eyes blinked once. Watching. Waiting. Trusting. The shot that echoed. It was just past noon when the trouble came. A high, dry wind swept through the woods, rattling pine needles loose in thin streams. Lily was splitting firewood behind the shelter, sweat beading beneath her collar, when the first warning came, a guttural growl. Low. Savage. Not from Bramble. From something else. She turned just in time to see the neighbor's dog, an enormous brindle pit mix named Duke, charging down the slope. He was snarling, teeth bared, muscles bunching with every bound. "Duke!" someone yelled from far off. Too late. Lily barely had time to raise the axe before he was on her. She stumbled backward, arms raised. Duke lunged. Then a blur of silver gray slammed into the side of the dog like a bolt of lightning. Bramble. She struck Duke hard, jaws snapping, claws raking across his flank. The dog yelped and turned, now focused entirely on the new threat. They tangled in the dirt, teeth flashing, snarls echoing through the trees. Lily screamed, but it was useless. This was no scuffle. It was a fight for survival. The sound of the struggle tore through the woods like thunder. Duke managed to pin Bramble briefly, jaws clamping down on her shoulder. Lily grabbed a shovel from the side of the shelter and charged in, screaming. She slammed the metal end against Duke's side with everything she had. He yelped and backed off, limping and bloodied. Bramble collapsed to the ground, breathing hard, her fur matted with blood. Lily dropped to her knees beside her. No, no, no. Footsteps approached fast, boots on rock cursing, shouting. Jesus, what the hell happened? It was Brian Holbrook, Duke's owner. He grabbed his dog by the collar, yanking him away. "That thing just attacked my dog." "Your dog charged me," Lily snapped, her voice raw. "Bramble saved me. She would have torn him apart if I hadn't stepped in." "Saved you? That's a wild lynx. She should have been shot months ago." Lily rose slowly, shielding Bramble's body with her own. "She's done more good than you ever will." Holbrook didn't respond. Just spat into the dirt, gathered Duke, and stormed off, muttering threats about rangers and rifles. Lily knelt beside Bramble, trembling. Blood stained her coat, dark and fresh. A puncture wound just beneath her shoulder, deep and ragged. Lily knew that kind of wound. It could fester quickly. It could kill. She worked quickly, cleaning the gash with boiled water and strips of cloth from her last clean shirt. Bramble didn't growl. Didn't flinch. She just stared at Lily, as if to say, "I'd do it again." But the damage was done, in more ways than one. The next day, a government vehicle rolled up the trail. 2 agents stepped out. One carried a rifle slung casually across his back. The other had a tranquilizer kit in hand. "Where's the lynx?" he asked coldly. Lily stood in front of the shelter's entrance, arms crossed, heart pounding. "She's gone." The man frowned. "You expect us to believe she just disappeared? After a violent incident?" "She's wild," Lily said flatly. "She comes and goes. You've been saying that yourselves." The agent narrowed his eyes. "If she's found again, we'll have to put her down. She's been declared a threat to the public. You understand that, don't you? Lily didn't answer. She just stared at him until they left. That night, she crept through the trees with Bramble bundled in a salvaged wool blanket, her steps careful and slow. They walked deep into the forest, past the creek, past the fire-scarred ridge, into the heart of land no one else walked. There she found a hidden outcropping, a natural cave between two slabs of granite, dry and high from flood zones. She laid Bramble down gently, brushed her fur back, and whispered, "Just rest. I'll come back." Bramble didn't speak, didn't purr. But her eyes fluttered closed, and her breathing steadied. The forest was closing in now. Not with violence, but with silence. And Lily knew, from this point forward, she wasn't just fighting for a lynx. She was fighting for something far rarer. A bond the world couldn't categorize. A loyalty that didn't fit into law or biology. Something untamed. Something real. The cave and the cabin. The first snowfall came early. By mid-October, the mountains were blanketed in white. Frost coated the pine needles like glass, and the trails vanished beneath a silent sheet of snow. Winter had arrived in Montana with teeth, and Lily knew what that meant. It was time to disappear completely. She had no intention of returning to town. Not with rumors swirling, not with wildlife agents lurking like hunters. Not with Bramble still healing, tucked deep in the natural cave beyond the fire-scarred ridge. So she moved. She packed what little she had, tools, canned beans, bandages, fire starter, and made her way through the forest alone, dragging a sled behind her like an old-world pioneer. Each mile was heavier than the last, the snow falling thick and silent around her boots. It took the better part of a day to reach the ranger outpost she discovered the year before, a half-collapsed structure abandoned decades ago by search and rescue. Half of the roof was gone. The chimney was cracked. But it was dry. High. Hidden. Safe. Lily set to work immediately. She patched the roof with tarp and pine branches, sealed the broken window with duct tape and old feed sacks. She lined the walls with blankets and set a woodpile near the hearth. She even found a rusted stove that still worked, barely. It wasn't home. But it would do. Bramble arrived 3 nights later, limping slightly but stronger now. She didn't wait at the edge of the trees this time. She stepped into the outpost, slow and cautious, eyes flicking to every shadow, nose twitching. Lily didn't speak. She just opened her arms, kneeling in front of the fire. Bramble stepped forward and leaned into her chest. It was the first time she'd ever done that. No growl. No tension. Just trust. They fell into rhythm quickly. Each morning, Lily would boil snow for water, then hike out to check the snares she'd set far from their shelter. They weren't meant to kill, just enough to catch small prey. Rabbits. Sometimes squirrels. Enough to feed Bramble, sometimes enough for herself. She patched Bramble's wounds each day, checking for infection, watching the muscle rebuild beneath the matted fur. The lynx no longer flinched from her touch. She'd lay still and close her eyes as Lily worked, breathing slow and steady. At night, they listened to the wolves howl on the far ridges. The fire crackled, and frost edged the windows. Sometimes Lily would speak. Not stories, she didn't have many left. But memories. Fragments of Jonah. Of laughter that echoed through the pines before everything burned. Bramble never answered, but she stayed close. And somehow, that made the silence feel whole. They were 2 creatures, one woman, one wildcat, both exiled from a world that no longer made room for them. But here in the cold and the quiet, they'd built something fierce. Something fragile. Something like home. Letters to no one. The snow thickened day by day, blanketing the world in silence. Tracks disappeared overnight. Even the trees seemed quieter, burdened under layers of white, holding their breath like the rest of the mountains. Lily began writing again. She found an old notebook in the ranger outpost storage chest, its pages yellowed and musty, warped at the corners by time. The pen she used skipped when it got too cold, so she kept it tucked in her sock or under her sleeve. She didn't write to herself. She wrote to Jonah. There's a tree near the outpost, split in half by lightning. The bark is charred, but the inside's still green. I think that's how I feel. Burnt, but not all the way through. Each day she filled a page. Sometimes more. Sometimes she wrote in the dark, with Bramble curled at her side like a coiled shadow. Other times she wrote by the morning light, steam rising from her mug while the lynx watched the woods through the broken windowpane. She never reread the pages. Just wrote them, tore them from the spine, and tucked them beneath a stone near the fireplace. It wasn't therapy. It was ritual. One night, she paused halfway through a letter. Bramble was pacing, restless, her ears flicking toward the wind howling outside. Something was off. Lily set the notebook down and moved to the door. Opened it. The night was ink black, snow falling sideways, wind howling down from the ridge like a banshee. But beneath it all, something else. A sound. A distant voice calling a name. A child's voice. Lily stiffened. Bramble moved beside her, eyes sharp, body tense. They heard it again. Faint. Echoed. A cry. Bramble growled low in her throat. Not a warning, but a signal. Lily stepped back inside, threw on her coat, grabbed her flashlight and boots. "You heard it too, didn't you?" she whispered. Bramble's ears twitched once. Then she darted into the trees. Lily followed. Snow whipped her face. The wind bit her cheeks raw. But she kept going, because something deep inside, the same thing that had told her to save Bramble all those years ago, screamed that someone was out there. And Bramble was already leading the way. That night marked something new. Not just survival. Not just mourning. But a shift. Because as Lily watched the lynx sprint through the snowdrifts, tail low, muscles fluid, silent as a whisper, she realized something. Bramble wasn't just staying because of instinct. She was choosing this. Choosing her. Lily pressed her notebook to her chest as she ran, letters crackling in her coat. If she lived through the storm, maybe she'd reread them. Maybe she'd even write a different ending. Not about loss. But about what stayed. What survived. What refused to leave. The avalanche. The child's voice grew louder. Lily pushed through waist-deep snow, lungs burning, flashlight beam jittering across the white. Her boots slipped on the ice crusted beneath the drifts. Somewhere ahead, Bramble leapt effortlessly between trees, her gray coat nearly invisible in the blizzard. Then Lily saw it, a flash of blue near the riverbank, half buried. A boy. Maybe 7 or 8. Curled tight into himself beneath a fallen pine bough, snow piling over his back. "Hey. Hey, sweetie." Lily stumbled forward, falling to her knees beside him. "I've got you." His face was pale, lips blue, clothes soaked through. She peeled off her coat and wrapped it around him, pressing him to her chest. "Stay with me, okay? You're going to be all right. I've got you now." Bramble circled them once, then stopped, ears up, body rigid. That's when Lily heard it. A low, bone-deep rumble. At first she thought it was wind. But the ground beneath her boots quivered. A second later, the ridge above them cracked. The avalanche began with a sound like the earth tearing open. A wall of snow and ice and shattered branches surged down the slope, swallowing trees like matchsticks. "Move!" Lily screamed, throwing the boy over her shoulder and running toward the lower ravine. Her muscles screamed in protest. Her legs barely lifted through the powder. Behind her, the roar grew louder, unstoppable. Bramble ran ahead, darting side to side, looking back every few yards, eyes wide. The boy whimpered, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "It's okay," Lily panted. "We're gonna make it. Just hold on." The snow thundered behind them. Branches cracked like gunshots. The world was collapsing. Then Bramble stopped. She darted left into a narrow crevice between two boulders, an old game trail. Barely wide enough for a human. Lily didn't hesitate. She followed. They slipped into the crack seconds before the avalanche hit. A deafening crash exploded behind them as thousands of pounds of snow and ice slammed past the crevice, filling the woods with white fury. The wind was sucked from the air. The ground trembled. Lily pressed her body tight against the boy, shielding his head, her ears ringing. Bramble crouched at the far end of the crevice, eyes locked on the shifting snow. And then, silence. Long. Heavy. Absolute. Lily's heart pounded in her throat. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. Minutes passed. Maybe more. Then Bramble stepped carefully out into the clearing. Lily followed, clutching the boy. The forest was unrecognizable. Trees flattened. The trail gone. Only a sea of white remained, untouched except for one narrow stretch, the one they had passed through. The crevice had saved them. Bramble had saved them. Again. Lily collapsed to her knees, tears freezing on her cheeks. The boy was alive, weak, hypothermic, but alive. She looked up at Bramble, who sat a few feet away, tail twitching, fur dusted with snow. Their eyes met. No words passed between them. But something ancient did. A thread. A promise. A knowing. Bramble turned and led the way back toward the cabin. Lily followed, carrying the boy close to her chest, whispering to him softly. "You're safe now. You're safe because of her." That night, she made a fire in the outpost. She wrapped the boy in every blanket she had, fed him sips of hot broth, checked his limbs for frostbite. When he finally slept, Lily stepped outside. The stars had come out, clear and bright in the aftermath of the storm. And there, on the ridge above the outpost, Bramble stood silhouetted in the moonlight. Lily raised a hand. Bramble didn't move. But she didn't vanish either. She simply remained, watching. Because when everything falls, there are those who run. And those who stay. The world finds them again. The child's name was Caleb. He was 8 years old, lost during a snowshoeing trip with his uncle, who had fallen down a ravine and broken his leg. Caleb had wandered in the storm for hours before Lily found him, barely conscious. When the forest rangers arrived 2 days later, drawn by the emergency signal Lily finally dared to activate, they didn't expect to find him alive. They didn't expect to find her alive, either. Lily stood in the doorway of the old outpost, hair tangled, eyes sunken with exhaustion, wrapped in the same threadbare coat she'd given to Caleb. Bramble wasn't anywhere in sight. "Ms. McKenna," one ranger asked carefully, "are you all right?" Lily only nodded. "He's inside. He's warm now." The boy was lifted by helicopter an hour later. Cameras came the next day. The Lynx woman story went viral in days. Grieving wildlife expert rescues boy, claims Lynx saved them from avalanche. Reclusive fire survivor and her mysterious wild companion. Is this Montana's real-life forest guardian? Lily didn't speak to the press. She gave one written statement, crediting the boy's survival to the instincts of a creature we so often misunderstand. She didn't mention Bramble by name. But the world filled in the blanks. Photos surfaced, grainy trail cam stills, drone footage from weeks earlier, even a shot someone had captured years ago of Bramble perched near the cabin ruins, her silhouette unmistakable. They all wanted more. More proof. More video. More Bramble. But Bramble didn't show herself again. She disappeared as the helicopters came. As the agents returned. As the world tried to put Lily in a box she no longer fit inside. A wildlife expert. A fire survivor. A forest recluse. A legend. They called her all of it. But not once did they understand what she had truly lost, or what she had truly found. They offered her jobs, interviews, book deals. She refused them all. Instead, when the snow began to melt in March, Lily packed a satchel with dried meat, her old notebook, and a weatherproof camera. She left the outpost before dawn, without telling anyone where she was going. She didn't leave a note. Only one thing remained on the fireplace mantel. A drawing Caleb had left behind before he was flown out, done in pencil and dirt-smudged crayon. It showed a woman with tangled hair and a lynx at her side, both standing tall on a snowy ridge. They were facing away from the viewer. Toward the woods. What remains in the wild? The forest greeted her like it remembered. Lily hiked deeper than she had in months, through still silent groves and melt-slick ridges, across streams rushing with ice water and thawed earth. No trails. No signs. Just instinct. And one morning, she found the cave again. Empty. But the claw marks were still there on the stone. The scent. The imprint where Bramble had once slept. Lily sat down in the entrance and waited. Not calling. Not moving. Just waiting. 2 nights passed. On the third, in the silver blue of dawn, a shadow appeared between the trees. Silent. Watchful. Cautious. Bramble. Older now. Scar around her shoulder. Fur slightly darker, roughened by winter. But her eyes were the same, gold and wild and deep with something that had no human name. She stepped forward slowly, one paw after another, until she stood inches from Lily. No hesitation. No fear. And then, she pressed her head gently against Lily's knee. Lily laughed for the first time in months. Not because the world was healed. Not because the pain was gone. But because this moment, was real. She didn't return to town. Not that year. Not the next. She lived in the forest, quiet and free, walking the ridges with Bramble at her side. Watching the seasons change. Tending to injured creatures when they crossed her path. Writing again, this time for no one. Sometimes she'd spot hikers in the distance. She never approached. Sometimes she heard the rumors. The Lynx woman. The ghost of Bitterroot. The guardian. But Lily didn't care what they called her. Because in a world that burned her to ash, one creature chose to stay. Not out of obedience. Not out of ownership. But because something unspoken tied them together. A fire. A bond. A choice. And no law, no tragedy, no storm could take that away. Because some friendships aren't measured in words or papers or names. Some are measured in footsteps through the snow. In eyes that do not look away. In the silent promise of wild things. That when the world leaves you behind, they won't. Whether it's a wild lynx or a woman who's lost everything, their story reminds us of a powerful truth. Not all friendships need explaining. Some bonds are born from pure trust, unspoken loyalty, and the choice to stay when it would be easier to leave. Lily and Bramble teach us that when life strips everything away, what truly matters is who remains. You don't have to be a hero. Sometimes, being the one who stays is more than enough. If this story touched your heart, let it echo into your world. Be someone's Bramble, silent if needed, but always near. Be someone's Lily, offering safety even when your own world is broken. Thank you for walking this path with us on Paw Print Stories. We share more than stories. We share the quiet truths animals teach us about love, survival, and the wild strength of the human spirit. So now, the real question is, what will you do when you come across a lost soul in the forest of life?